Continuing on with Scrum with GitHub projects, let's talk about requirement details, markdown, and estimates. If we want to view and edit the details of a PBI, you just hover over the title and then click. That brings up the detail view for this item. I think of this as being a semi-read-only view of the PBI. Up at the top, we've got the title. Below the title, we have information about who created and edited this item. And then below that, the description info for this item, which is currently blank. On the right side, you've got editable options for a lot of the column values from the previous view. Assignees, status, priority, size, estimate, iteration. But then we also have a couple new values, start date and end date. The start date and end date values probably aren't something that you'd use for a typical Scrum-based project. They're here to support some other features of GitHub projects, specifically the release planning tools and release planning views. Back to that idea that this is a semi-read-only view of the item. If you want to edit the title or the descriptive details, you'll need to click Edit. The Edit Title option is here, and the edit link for the description is here. Let's modify the title. Come over here and click Edit Title. Change the title to be Product Backlog Item ABC. When we've finished editing, we can save the change by clicking the Save button, or undo the change by clicking the Cancel button. I'm going to click Save. That modified the title and put us back into that semi-read-only mode. Next, let's come over to the edit link for the description. Click on the Edit button, and now we see the description editor. If you're used to working with full-featured rich text editors like you'd get in Microsoft Word or in the Work Item Editor in Azure DevOps, this editor here might disappoint you in the beginning. But I assure you that this is actually a pretty darned powerful little editor. Let's add some text. This is the description of PBI ABC. So, plain text content has been achieved, but what if we want to add some formatting? Let's add some more text. This text is bold. Okay, so this text is clearly not bold, but we've got some options here at the top of this editor control. I'll select the text that I want to make bold, and then I can click the bold button that's above the text. Okay, so I clicked the button to make this selected text bold, and instead of making it bold, it just surrounded the text with 2 asterisks on one side and 2 asterisks on the other side. This formatting is known as Markdown, or Markdown syntax. This support for Markdown syntax means that you can do a ton of formatting stuff through this interface. Markdown is a simple syntax for editing plain text documents that will later get turned into HTML. What's nice is that it's easy to write, easy to read, and there's a ton of stuff you can do with it. The buttons along the top of the editor are only just a small subset of what you can do. When I'm working on a requirements document, one thing that I find is very helpful is creating headings and sections in my documents. You can create headings by using the hashtag # syntax. Add the hashtag character to the start of a line, and then type the text of your heading. Then you can add some text that'll live under that heading. And you can create subheadings too. If you want to create a level 2 subheading, just start your line with 2 hashtag characters followed by the heading text. Then you can add the text that lives under that subheading, and you can create multiple subheadings with subheading text. So that's a description for this product backlog item written in Markdown. It's relatively readable as it is here, but you can also preview what it would look like when it's rendered. To see what it actually looks like when it's formatted, just come up here to the Preview tab, click Preview, and here's what that Markdown looks like. Let's go back to the right tab, and I'll show you a couple more handy Markdown thingies that we can do. Let's say we want to create a list of bullet points. In Scrum, you might want to put in your acceptance criteria this way. Come up to the top and click this bullet list button. That creates a line that starts with a dash. If you don't feel like clicking that button, you can just type that yourself. That's fine too. Now just type what you want for text in the bullet list. Click over to the Preview tab to see what this actually looks like. And there's the bullet list at the bottom of the page. Let's come back to the right tab, and I'm going to show you one last handy item. This button up here helps us to create checkbox lists of items as part of the requirement description. Click the button, and it creates this entry down here in the editor. Type in some items for this to-do list. Hop back over to the Preview tab, and here's our list of checkbox items. I find that these can be super helpful for handling deployment tasks and/or tracking things that need to be completed on the road to something being fully done, basically stuff that you don't want to forget. If we're good with our description and we're ready to save, we just have to click the Update Comment button. Click that button and the changes are saved to the item. And then just to make sure I mention it, You also have all these items over here on the right side of the screen. These let you edit some of the core fields for the PBI. For example, I'll come up here and change the size value. Set this to medium. And as soon as I make the change, it's saved. While I'm here, I'll plug in a value for the estimate field. And I'll set the status to do. Okay, that's probably enough on this screen here. To get back to the previous screen, you just click the X for the close button here in the upper right. And now we're back on the table view of our backlog, and you can see that all the values we changed are reflected right here automatically. I'm going to populate the rest of these PBIs with some values at super fast speed, and then talk about the estimate values and the size values. You're probably thinking that estimate and size sound like pretty much the same thing. They're both some kind of estimate for how big an item is or how much effort an item is or something like that. They're both common types of estimations that are used by Scrum-oriented teams, but my guess is that you're probably going to use the estimate column. Love them or hate them, probably the most common way for Scrum-based teams to do estimation of PBIs is to use story points. Typically, you're going to use values from the Fibonacci sequence for this, so 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, etc. And if you've checked out some of the other videos on my channel, you might know that I'm a little mixed on the whole story point estimation thing. For example, I've got a video called Story Point Estimation Stinks. But most of the teams I've ever worked with use story points, so yeah, the values would go into the estimate column. And by the way, if you're interested in other ways of estimating and forecasting work, you should check out my 21 video series on flow metrics. I'll put the links to all those in the description for this video. Whatever you use for values in the estimate field, they're going to be numbers, and that's an essential point. On most Scrum teams, you'll eventually want to calculate your team's velocity. I'm not going to go deep into what that is here, but it's a metric that describes how much your team managed to achieve in a given sprint or in a series of sprints. You'll use this number to help predict how much work they can likely do in the future. Velocity is a numeric value, and you need it to be numeric because you're going to do, well, math. Using t-shirt size values like we've got in the size column, well, those shirt sizes are text. It's pretty darned hard to add small to medium and figure out what the numeric value is. So my guess is that you and your teams are going to tend to use the estimate field rather than the size field for ease of reporting and metrics.